Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Prep Your Standard NATO. Today's guest is Karen Court from Overwatch Australia. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite for Overwatch Australia.
Okay, so Karen, how are you connected to the military?
So I'm the daughter of a Vietnam veteran, and I also married the service, two of them, I have to say, Army and Navy. So really my whole life has been in a support role within the defence family. And because I lost my father a few years after he came home from Vietnam, I was also a legacy ward. So the broader defence family has given a lot to me over my years, and now it's my turn to give back to that community.
And you do that through a company called Overwatch Australia.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about who Overwatch is and what they do?
So the remit of Overwatch Australia is prevention of veteran suicide, and we do that by providing a boots on the ground first responder service for veterans and occasionally serving members who are identified as being at risk of suicide. We're not a one-stop shop, nor do we profess to be a one-stop shop. But what we're really good at is that first responder space, that identification and getting the veteran or ex-serving member to safety. Once we secure the safety of that person, we'll then work with them to refer them off to other services that they need. It might be through to their RSL sub-branch for funding assistance, or through to the welfare officer here at RSL WA. It might be to Bravery Trust. It might be to help them get access to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Sometimes they don't even know about the non-liability white card, so it'll be helping them get that support, or referring them off for housing issues. There can be a range of issues that either trigger or cause the person to be at risk. So we make sure that once they're safe, we follow up to get them to that next tier of care. We want to provide a veteran-centric service, but we want to make sure that it's holistic. There's no use just putting a Band-Aid approach on that, because then you're only going to get people coming back to the same spot.
So how do you identify someone's at risk?
There's a number of ways people are brought to our attention. We have an awesome network of Facebook groups, and that's actually where Overwatch started its life. It was a need was identified in a Royal Australian Regiment social group called RAR Buddies, where they had a spate of suicides over a very short period of time, and so they decided that there was not much else being done for this group of the community, and that the best way to do it was to do it as a peer response. So RAR Overwatch was the first group that started, and eventually that became quite big and crowded, and they found that even within Army, not all the corps necessarily have the same language or do things in the same way. So as that group got bigger, one of the founding members helped split it out into other corps. And then in around March or April 2015, a group was added for Navy and a group for Air Force. So we have all those groups that are populated with serving members. I'm not the only civilian in Overwatch. We do have 3 or 4 people within Overwatch who have a civilian background, but they all have very close ties to defence, and they all have a specific skill set for which they've been brought into Overwatch. So largely we are a peer responder service. So to get back on the track of your question, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So quite often the people in those groups will ask for help themselves, or there'll be, within the groups, you have people who are receiving help, people are providing help, and what we call observers. So the people who will see in other groups they're members of, or through their own network of military friends, somebody who's in crisis. So they'll come to us with those concerns. We'll then start a response. So you'll get somebody to reach out to them to touch base. We also have a 1-800 number, and that 1-800 number is manned by Overwatch senior coordinators 24/7. It's always one of us who answers the phone. You won't get sent off to an answer service. There'll be nobody else pick up but an Overwatch member. So we also occasionally we'll get notifications via our website or by our community Facebook page, so which is the open public forum that we share all sorts of stuff on, talking about what we do, but also talking about the other great things that are happening in the veteran support space as well. And some frivolous things, of course.
Some pretty good memes popping up on there.
I work hard to find those memes. So we get those notifications come from a broad range of different people. And the more people who find out about Overwatch, the more of that feedback we'll get. We don't mind where the response comes from. We just want to hear about them. We can't help people if we don't know that they need help.
Yeah, fair enough. So when somebody really needs help, so it's just a simple reach out, how you going, mate, are you okay kind of thing?
Do you know what? Our responses can be anything from an online chat because people get into such a position that they think they're the only person who's ever been in that spot. They're the only person who's had these challenges from their service. And it's not until we get somebody else. Our aim is always to get same service, same core, same sex.
Yep.
But if you can't get that, anybody who can talk the same language, if it's from a different service or it's a male to female or female to male, it's being able to share that language and not feeling self-conscious about the things you have to say. That's really important. So our responses will vary anywhere from that online chat through to actual suicide intervention, where we're going knocking on the front door, and sometimes we'll go in with police, sometimes we'll get there ahead of the emergency services. In that worst case scenario, we always work in with the emergency services, either police or ambulance, because you just have to, you have to, and that can often get a better outcome for the person that we're going out to help as well. So the people who respond aren't always the people that are coordinating the response. We'll have a coordinator sitting somewhere in Australia who'll be coordinating that response. They'll work with the first responders, tying in the information, any new information that comes to the coordinator, they'll be feeding that to the first responder out on the ground, or they might be the person calling 000 and linking the police in and tying the assistance all together. So we've got that almost a chain of command. Overwatch responses, if you like, are mirrored on a battalion radio net way of communicating.
That's what I was just thinking. It sounds like a military operation.
Very much so. And I guess that's been one of the challenges as a civilian, is picking up that. But I also have run triages in hospital, so it sort of works on a similar basis. But for everybody else, that language is so consistent to what they're doing, regardless of service, that it works, and it works well.
Well, it sounds like a really good setup. It sounds like something that works pretty well.
It does work really well. We had over 100 major responses last year, and so they're the things that have been reported and we can capture the data from. But that certainly doesn't include where people speak up in a social media group. Social media is just so important across the age groups now. We have in our cohort, just in the social media groups, we have people from Vietnam onwards who participate in those discussions. So you do capture across the age groups. But so if somebody speaks up in the group and then everyone jumps onto that thread and has the conversation and says, I've been through the same thing, that proactive type of response can actually negate the need to be sending out first responders to someone, because that reaching out and making people closing down that isolation can be really helpful.
And those stories are so important, because you were right in saying that when you get to a certain stage, you feel like you're isolated, you feel like no one else has ever gone through this before.
Yeah.
And to talk to someone who has been through that, has gone through it, has come out the other end, it's very important to recovery and to realisation that you're not the only person suffering.
That you're not alone. It's actually our motto that goes on our logo, is that you're never alone, because you're not. There's so many people who've been in similar circumstances that can be a huge realisation for people.
Absolutely.
I guess one of the other things is too that it's not unique, that we believe that there's some issues with transition from service, especially for older veterans or ex-serving members, where that they just don't know about the things they can access and the supports they can access. They've often moved away from defence circles when they've left service as part of their transition back to being a civilian, or for lots of different reasons. So they don't always hear about the things that supports that they can access. The white card being the most important one of all, I think, because it can help them get that mental health treatment that they need early on in the piece before things fall apart, family relationships or financial problems develop or whatever. That white card is just such an important tool. But if people don't know about it, it's 100% worthless.
And a lot of people don't know that all you have to do is serve one full day and you're entitled to that. And that just opens up a lot of channels to treat your mental health.
And even before that change to the one day when it was 3.5 years, people still didn't know then that that was an entitlement that they could access to help with their treatment without the need to get an advocate or submit a claim.
Yeah, I mean, my mother's a prime example. She's been out for quite a number of years now, and I literally held her hand and forced her to come see one of our advocates because she didn't have any cards whatsoever. I was like, Mum, you're entitled to at least a white card. And turns out she's entitled to more, and now she's getting discounts at places, and she's got this, that, and everything else covered, and it's been a huge relief financially to her.
Yes, that it just can be so massive, but sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So I think that's really important to have that conversation. And if it just means that we can get someone who rings up on the telephone because they've Googled veteran support and they ring us, and quite often we'll get those phone calls in the middle of the night where people are feeling lost and they just don't know what to do, and you might chat with them for half an hour in the middle of the night, but you can give them really simple solutions that they can then pick up with and run themselves, and it does help. It helps to know that there's people out there.
So how do those conversations normally go? So do you just talk about anything and everything, or is there generally
talk about anything and everything?
Right. Awesome.
A person we have call might initially be very scared to tell you what they're talking about. So I'll usually open the conversation. What's your name? Where do you live? Tell me about your service. They might say, have you served? And I go, no, I haven't, but this is my story and this is what I do and why I'm in this role. And it just breaks that ice, and they find that they'll then start to unpack their story and tell you what's going on. And I think because we don't ever dictate to anybody about, okay, you've touched base with us, you must do this. They're not our client. They're a member of our community that we care about. So we just want to give them the advice. We'll help them do those things. And we will always do some follow-up to check on how they're going. Are they okay? Do we need to send them any further information?
So there's no confrontational, fill out this form and we'll get back to you kind of thing?
No.
Good.
Certainly not. Yeah.
Now, you're obviously a very busy woman because you have a full-time job on top of this.
Yes.
How do you juggle all of this?
I can sleep when I'm dead.
Hoorah.
Look, I work for really awesome employers who understand what it is I do and why, and are supportive of that. Since I started in that role just over 2 years ago, we actually have a number of veterans who work across our business now.
Great.
So they're getting to understand more about what we do. So they're really accommodating of if I'm late because I've had a phone call in the morning or I've been up half the night talking to someone, or if I'm taking the afternoon off to go and chat to lovely people. I'm just lucky that my employer works with me, and I have a defence family, so at home it's very well understood of what I'm doing. And teenage daughter that sometimes gets a little bit frustrated when her time is lost to other things, but she also has an awesome understanding of what I do and why. And
I suppose it's a lot easier nowadays too with mobile phones and the fact that people can talk anywhere. You don't have to tie up the one line in the house.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a shuffle, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
It's so worth it. And I really love what I can give back to the defence community for the care that was shown to me in my younger years. So
yeah, great. What do you think is the major issue that you're finding a lot of these veterans are facing?
I don't think there's any one major issue. I think, in my opinion, the things that are the issues that we see things around lack of good transition processes when people are moving back into the civilian community, the stigma attached to mental health, and people not wanting to put up their hand while they're serving to say that they've developed problems.
Yep.
That's a huge one.
Oh, absolutely.
So they hold that, and they get out, and then everything
collapses
falls apart.
Yeah.
So that's an issue. I think just in general, the challenges of trying to transition to the civilian workforce as an ex-serving member, either that does have mental health issues but again tries to hide it because your job's so important, or some people get judged that they will have an issue when they don't, and so they can find it challenging to get employment.
Yeah, there seems to be this idea with some people that you're a veteran, you're damaged, you're going to walk in with a machine gun and shoot us all up, and it's just not true.
No, not true at all. And hiring those people just can be such a valuable experience. As I said, I have 3 veterans who work in our small business now, and they're great employees. They, for all those things, leadership, they're team players, they're extremely reliable.
You're used to getting yelled at?
How did you know? I don't yell that much. But all those things, they're great at working under pressure. So their mental health is the least of my worries as an employer.
Yeah, they're very valuable assets, and I suppose that's one of the difficult parts about transition. They've gone from being this highly trained, valuable, cog in the machine, and all of a sudden they're thrown into the civilian world and they're not important anymore. They don't feel that value.
Yeah. So, they're the sort of things that will trigger the issues. Family life after service too can be quite different. All of a sudden, mum or dad's home every day.
Yeah.
Every week, every month.
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge for all of us when your partner leaves service. So, again, there's so many different things.
Yeah. As a Navy brat myself who went through that, my dad got out when I was in year 12.
Yes.
And that was very difficult because, I'm almost an adult, and all of a sudden he's home and he has PTSD and he's got a really bad transition, and they're trying to screw him with his pension. And basically I finished high school, moved out of home, so I didn't have to deal with it. Like, it was very difficult on everyone. Yeah, so to have a support system like Overwatch out there for people like that who need that assistance.
And so for people like your dad, using him as an example, thank you, Dad, being able for us to know about that in the first instance and have somebody in that supportive environment, we can hook them up really quickly with another sailor in the same area who can support them through that or help them find those resources. Unfortunately, because of that stigma associated with mental health, which I feel is getting better, but it's definitely still there, is that they won't speak up until they're at crisis. And that makes it, like anything, much harder to deal with than if we know in the beginning.
Yeah. And the worst place you can be when you're in those situations is to be alone.
It's so isolating anyway. And, you know, for all the good of social media, sometimes social media can be isolating on its own.
Absolutely.
Because it's easy to slip into just got my phone in my hand constantly. I'm not criticising anyone for it. I'm the worst culprit. But you can do that and forget everything that's around you too, which can sometimes cause people to disengage more. A bit of a double-edged sword about whether what's the value versus the flip side of that as well. But yeah, just keeping people in that community of other like-minded people who know what they're going through, or being able to link them up. We have people all over Australia, even internationally. We did a response a few years ago, a couple of years ago now, probably a few. They all run in together after a while. But we had a response in Texas where we had responders out to that person in around 45 minutes.
Wow, that's insane.
So that's using the networks that we have of Australian expats, but also capacity building by building relationships with other bodies who do similar things to us. And a really good example of those relationship building that we have is with No Duff Charitable Trust in New Zealand. And No Duff take on a similar role as Overwatch Australia. And we have an awesome relationship with those guys. It's great because you do get such a lot of movement of expats from New Zealand to Australia and vice versa. We have a really great relationship where we can share support for each other on those jobs. Whether it's they get alerted of a Kiwi living here in Australia, they'll come to us. They have some of their own operators here, but they'll come to us and we'll help with that, and vice versa. But even more importantly, we shared lessons learned between the two groups. We've been very closely associated since No Duff started, sometime after Overwatch started. But there's myself and our Vice President, Ivan Elgersma, we went to No Duff's annual summit in November last year over in Wellington in New Zealand. And we were just able to learn such a lot from No Duff. So we're really happy to have that relationship because it extends what you can do for both of us.
Yeah.
We also have great relationships with Australian Homeless Veterans and Warrior Racing Limited, who are also based here in Perth. So if we've got a homeless veteran, we're going to share that with Australian Homeless Veterans and work together to do that. So those, and there's lots of other people that we have those relationships with as well, and they're just so important because you need that community to provide that holistic service to give the best care we can to the veteran when they are in crisis.
Yeah, the worst thing any ex-service organisation can do is close its doors and shut itself off from everyone else and go, well, we've got it handled. Because you don't. You need all these other people to help.
Absolutely. And you can't. Yep, you might be able to do that for a certain period of time, thinking that you're the only person who can deal with all those individual issues that a veteran might face. But at some point, something's going to fall over there and there'll be an outcome that nobody desires. So it's about collaboration and working together with those other service providers to achieve the best outcomes. And for us, that also has to be service provision that doesn't have an ego. Mm-hmm. I'm here talking today, but I'm not here talking as Karen Court. I'm here representing Overwatch Australia. People get their egos nipped in the bud quite quickly with us.
Yep.
We are one group doing a job for our community. We very much, how we operate is based on teamwork.
All for one.
Yep.
It's wonderful.
Yep.
So if somebody needs help, how can they find you guys?
So they can find Facebook just by searching Overwatch Australia. They'll get a lovely black and white logo that comes up. Please don't mistake it with the lovely black and white logo of the Overwatch
the video game. Yep. Otherwise you're going to have cowboys and all that random stuff.
We have a website which is www.overwatchaustralia.org.au, or they can call us on 1800 699 2824, which the good way to remember that's 1800 My Watch.
Hey, someone paid well for that.
Yep. Or alternatively, if people prefer, because not everybody does have social media, we also have an Instagram account.
Hey.
But they can also email contact@overwatchaustralia.org.au.
Fantastic. There you go, guys. Lots of ways to get in touch. If you are in need of assistance, if you do need a little help, even if you just need someone to talk to, please reach out. It is one of the strongest things you can do.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having a chat with me today.
Thanks for inviting me.
This podcast was edited, published and produced by the RSLWA. Head to www.rslwa.org.au for other content. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook.